the American companies. We have to, implement like proper working conditions in construction so that people don't die every week. I think it was like 2 weeks, two construction workers died every week. So yeah, that was in the 60s in Quebec, the anti-fascist movement, and then in the 70s there was the founding of a communist party because the nationalist movement was at a crossroads. Are they going to take the nationalist path, or are they going to take the socialist path? So there was finally a communist party that was founded in Quebec that was including French Canadians. So that happened in the 70s, all the way until the 80s, and then in the 80s, it fell apart because the revolutionary movement across the world fell apart. Even though that fell apart, there was a strong resistance against globalization that happened in Quebec, and there was a strong punk movement that was based on organizing of street youth, working class youth, that would fight the remnants of neo-Nazis and the active neo-Nazis in the streets, but also culturally and through protest. So that was a form of anti-fascist organizing that was really important in Montreal and in different places in Quebec. And I just wanted to say that, like, when Germany, after Germany lost the Second World War, U.S. took one half, and the USSR took another to kind of supervise Germany. And there was supposed to be what they called the denazification process, where they would try to transform society and take out the cultural and ideological elements of Nazism from Germany. The U.S. didn't do that. They didn't denazify in Western Germany. And what happened is a lot of Nazis left Germany and went to the Americas. And that's true for this very city that I'm living in Montreal. So a lot of people ended up Nazis ended up in different old German colonies, but also Brazil, Argentina, and North America. And, there's like stories that people say about going to their friend's house and they're like, oh, what a nice picture of your grandfather, and they look close and he's wearing a swastika with the uniform. So like these things can be transmitted from one generation to the next, and it's important for us to not forget that the legacy of Nazism still lives on one generation to the next, even if it's hiding. Unfortunately, the revolutionary movement got a lot weaker. And I think people were trying to change that in the 2010s here. But one thing I think was the big wake-up call was COVID, because COVID was like, basically the economy, there's this environmental problem happening. We don't know how long the nature has that can sustain the way that we're living. There's all these different social uprisings happening. But we don't have a communist party to unite the oppressed and the exploited. And so COVID was this wake-up call where revolutionary organizers had to kind of ask themselves this question, because basically the right wing advanced a lot during COVID, right? They made huge strides during COVID and leading up to it, because there's no counterbalance. Revolutionaries and a solid communist party are not there to unite people, and so people are looking for an explanation into why their lives are bad, and we turn towards right-wing and fascist explanations. So I think, COVID was a big wake-up call around that, and essentially, like, the main thing that I want to say is that we started to organize here in Montreal. We're building neighborhood organizations, and our neighborhood organizations are hoping to unite working class neighborhoods, unite all oppressed and working class people to work towards making the community stronger. But the thing that we have to remember is that because of the failure of revolutionary organizing, and because of the failure of the leftists to fight, to propose a solution for our problems, because of it, we're so divided. What's happened is that people have there's a lot of confusion, and if we have no patience for people's confused ideas, then we're not going to be able to unite the community. And so what we do, instead of saying, oh, you should say you're anti-capitalist or you can't be in our group, what we do is we say, what are the things in your community that you want to fix? What is the most urgent and dire problem in our community that can unite the entire community? We don't knock on people's doors and say, hey, have you heard about Palestine and the genocide? We don't say, hey, let's organize to fight capitalism. We don't bring our own agenda because we need a community to win. So we have to go with the community's agenda. So we go door knocking and we ask people, what is the biggest problem for you in your life? And we try to find one problem that can unite the community that has nothing to do with our personal agendas. And then we try to engage in struggle and win that struggle. That's what our new strategy now, to try to revive the revolutionary movement and revive anti-fascist forces and take back the recruitment from fascism towards a revolutionary perspective. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to have a couple questions. I'm going to give a 5-minute explanation about what we're going to talk about. Kitchener's anti-fascist history, how we were one of the founding chapters of anti-racist action, how we fought gentrification, how we created dual power in certain communities, and all that stuff. We didn't mean for it to go this long in this way. We had a very different vision, but some people might want to take a break. So, are you still there, Louisa?
Yeah.
So we'll take one question for Louisa.
I just want to give you guys ministry and encourage you to join our Off the Defensive organization.
Okay, anyways. So we'll have one question for Louisa, then we'll have a 5-minute break. We'll ask people not to leave, and then we will talk about Kitchener from from Zundel and the Heritage Front until 2020, actually. And how we kicked the fuck out of Zundel, chased him out, and all of that.
Yeah.
Are people cool with that?
Yeah.
And we're also going to talk about the fight for the CTS, all our comrades that died fighting to create a CTS, the loss of the CTS, and how we run our own safe supply and our own safe injection site in contravention to the law, because these are our comrades that are dying. We're losing 10 to 11, sometimes up to 30 people a day. And we think this is important, and at the end we're going to pass a hat around, because per day safe supply for people costs us out of our own pocket $200, food, drink, shelter, it comes to about $700 a day, and it's all out of our own pockets. The SDC always promises us money, but we always hear next week, next month, and you know what? You can't tell someone who's dying next month. So, yeah, one question, 10-minute break, and then we'll talk about the struggle for queer rights, the rights of drug users, the rights of poor people, and bashing them skinhead Nazi boneheads in. You have a question?
Can you repeat the call to action, Louisa? You said something about joining something, but I didn't hear what.
Off the Defensive.
So basically there's different groups, and we'll be speaking about that later on in my presentation. That's not really a question, so is there a more point? Yeah.
Yeah, she mentioned that, the French in Canada were kind of oppressed after they lost to the British. I'm wondering, did the French Canadians historically, did they treat Indigenous people better or more humane than the English Canadians?
Okay, you know what? That's like a divisive question, and this is why I say it's a divisive question. People aren't a monopoly, right? Like, you had French people that came here as indentured servants that ran off and fought with certain indigenous groups. You also had the French bourgeoisie that wanted to assimilate and murder indigenous people. You had French groups that made alliances with different French colonies, and you had English groups that made alliances. Six Nations, for example, was given land because they sided with the British. So it's not an issue of good people or bad people, it's an issue of colonialism. I myself, I'm a Republican. I don't hate British people. British people are working class people. I hate the monarchy and I hate the colonialist system. In the same way, I don't think that there are some French people that were better than native people and some English people that were worse than native people. There were brutal French people who brutalized native people, and there were English people in the Bacon Rebellion that ran off with the black slaves and joined the indigenous and killed their bosses. So you can't say, are these people good or bad? French colonialism, bad. English colonialism, bad. Off the bosses. Bring up the guillotine. Smoke time.
Okay, apparently it's smoke time.
Does anyone have a good cigarette? I mean a socialist Republican like the Spanish Civil War, like the IRA, what Republicans really are. Not the Republican Party.